The slap echoed through the meeting house like a gunshot. Mercy Holloway had struck her own cheek hard before any man in Bitter Creek could say a word about her face, her size, or her worth. The crowd froze. Her voice came out raw, but did not break. "If no man here'll have me, then I'll choose for myself." She turned. She pointed across the room. Pointed at the man with 3 bullet scars and a name folks only whispered. "I'll take him." Caleb Rourke lifted his head. And somewhere beneath his coat, a secret older than the territory itself stirred awake. Friends, before this story unfolds another inch, do me one small kindness. Tap that subscribe button, ring the bell, and stay with Mercy clear to the end. What she uncovers in Caleb Rourke's past is going to break your heart wide open and stitch it back together stronger than before. And down in the comments, tell us which town you're watching from tonight. We'd be mighty grateful to know just how far this story has traveled across this country of ours. Now back to Bitter Creek. The bell above the meeting house door clattered shut behind Mercy Holloway, and every head in the room turned at once. "Lord above," whispered Mrs. Pritchett from the front pew, fanning herself with a folded hymn sheet. "She actually came." Mercy heard it. She heard all of it. She always did. She walked the length of the meeting house with her shoulders square and her bonnet held tight in one hand. Her boots, men's boots because no woman's boot in the territory had ever been made for feet like hers, thudded against the planks. Each step felt like a hammer striking iron. The matchmaker stood at the front, a thin man in a black coat holding a leather ledger. "Name?" he asked, though every soul in that room already knew her name. "Mercy Holloway." "Age?" 26. A snicker rippled through the back row. The matchmaker scratched his pen across the page. "Father?" Mercy's jaw locked. "Stepfather, Hollis Crane." The pen stopped. The matchmaker looked up. "Crane sent you here. He told me I'd find a husband this morning, or I'd find a road out of his house by sundown." The matchmaker cleared his throat and looked past her into the crowd of men leaning against the walls, smoking, sipping from tin cups, pretending they hadn't been waiting hours for the spectacle. "Gentlemen," he called out, "Miss Holloway is of strong constitution, hard-working, honest, capable of bearing—" "She's capable of eating a whole hog," called a voice from the back. The room exploded with laughter. Mercy did not turn around. She did not flinch. She did not cry. She had learned long before this morning that tears only ever fed the wolves. "Bitters?" the matchmaker asked, his voice tight. Silence. A long, terrible silence. A woman near the window murmured just loud enough to carry, "Bless her heart." She actually thought somebody'd take her. "Bitters," the matchmaker repeated louder this time. A man in a yellow shirt finally raised one finger. "I'll take her for $2. I need somebody to muck out my stalls." More laughter. "I'll go 3, called another man. "But she sleeps in the barn, mind you." 5, said a third, "and she changes her name. Don't want my mother knowin' I married a Holloway." Mercy felt the floor tilt beneath her. Her stepfather stood by the door, arms folded, watching with the cold patience of a man waiting on a calf to drop. He had told her plain that morning, come back with a husband, or do not come back at all. She closed her eyes for one long heartbeat. She thought of her mother dead 3 winters now, who used to brush her hair by the window and whisper, "You are worth more, Mercy, than this world will ever tell you." She opened her eyes. And she did something the town of Bitter Creek would talk about for the rest of their born days. She turned. Slowly. Deliberately. She walked not toward the Bitters, but past them. Past the matchmaker's table. Past the laughing men. Past her stepfather, who hissed her name like a curse under his teeth. She walked the whole long length of the meeting house to the back wall. To the man sitting alone at the corner table. The man no one had spoken to all morning. The man no one would meet eyes with. The man whose hat sat low on his brow, and whose coat hid the pistol every man in the territory had heard about. Caleb Rourke. He didn't look up when she stopped in front of him. "Mr. Rourke," Mercy said. He took a long pull from his coffee. "Mr. Rourke," she said again, louder. He set the cup down, slowly. He raised his eyes. The room went absolutely silent. "Ma'am?" It was the first word he had spoken inside the Bitter Creek meeting house in 3 years. Mercy swallowed hard. Her voice did not shake. She would not let it shake. "I am told that a man may bid on a bride here today. That's the rumor. Then I will save you the trouble of biddin'." Caleb tilted his head, just slightly. "Beg pardon. I choose you." Behind her, Mrs. Pritchett gasped so hard she dropped her hymnal on the floor. A man near the stove choked on his tobacco. The matchmaker stuttered, "Miss Holloway, that is not how this is done." "That is how it is done now," Mercy said without turning around. Her eyes stayed locked on Caleb Rourke's. "Mr. Rourke, do you accept?" For a long moment, Caleb said nothing. His eyes moved over her face. Not her body, her face. He looked at her like a man reading something written there, in a language he had not heard since childhood. Then, slow as a sunrise, he stood up. He was taller than she had remembered from glimpses on the street. The brim of his hat shadowed half his face, but she could see the scar along his jaw clear enough the one folks said came from a man he had killed in Abilene. He set a coin on the table between them. A single gold coin. "That'll cover whatever debt the lady's stepfather is collecting on." Hollis Crane stepped forward, eyes narrowing. "Now you hold on a damn minute, Rourke. I said—" Caleb's voice dropped low, soft as gravel rolling down a hill. "That'll cover it." Hollis Crane shut his mouth. Caleb tipped his hat to Mercy. "Ma'am, if you're ready to go, I've got a wagon hitched outside." Mercy nodded once. She did not trust herself to speak. He held out his arm. She took it. And together, the most feared man in the territory and the heaviest girl in Bitter Creek walked out of that meeting house, leaving behind a town that for perhaps the first time in all its years had not one word left to say. The wagon rolled north out of Bitter Creek, with neither of them speaking for a long while. Mercy held her bag in her lap. The bag held everything she owned in this world: 2 dresses, her mother's hairbrush, a Bible with a broken spine. Her whole life, 26 years of it, fit into the space between her 2 hands. Caleb drove with the reins loose between his fingers. He didn't whip the horses. He didn't speak. He just watched the road. After a long stretch of silence, Mercy said, "You did not have to do that." "Reckon I did." "You did not even know my name an hour ago, Mr. Rourke." "Knew it." She turned her head. "Beg pardon. I knew your name." "How?" He didn't answer at first. The wagon creaked. A hawk circled overhead, calling once sharp and lonely. "Your mother," he finally said. Mercy's breath stopped in her chest. "My mother. She brought a meal out to my place. 3 winters back, right before she passed. I had taken sick and most folks figured the territory would be better off without me. She didn't know me from Adam, but she rode out 2 miles in the snow with a covered pot. Said her daughter Mercy had made it. Wouldn't take a dime. Wouldn't even sit down." Mercy's hands tightened on her bag. "I never knew that. She never told me. She made me promise I wouldn't tell you neither." "Why?" "Said you'd be embarrassed about it. Said you didn't think your cookin' was worth nothing to nobody." The tears came then. Mercy did not stop them. She let them fall silent into the lap of her dress. Caleb did not look at her. He gave her that mercy. He just kept his eyes on the road. After a long time, she said, "Mr. Rourke." "Caleb." "Caleb, I want you to know something." "Ma'am?" "I did not choose you because I thought you would be kind. No, I chose you because every soul in Bitter Creek told me you were dangerous." A muscle moved in his jaw. "And what would a lady want with a dangerous man, Miss Holloway?" "My stepfather sold my debt this morning, before the meeting even started." Caleb's hands tightened on the reins. "Sold it. To who?" "Augustus Thorne." The wagon stopped. It just stopped right there on the open road. Caleb sat very still. The hawk overhead screamed once and wheeled away into the sun. "Augustus Thorne." He repeated slow, like he was tasting something rotten. Yes, sir. Does Thorne know I bought you out from under him? He will by sundown. Caleb let out a breath that sounded to Mercy's ears like a man bracing himself for a long ride into hell. Miss Holloway. Mercy. Mercy, you did not pick a dangerous man this morning. You picked a dead man, and you put yourself right next to him. I know. Do you now? I know exactly what I picked, Caleb Rourke. I was not running from danger this morning. I was running toward someone who might survive it. He looked at her for the first time since the meeting house. Really looked at her. And whatever it was she saw in his eyes, it was not pity. It was not fear. It was not the look of a man weighing up a burden. It was something older, something tired, something that had been waiting a long, long time to be seen. He clicked the reins. The wagon moved on. Then I reckon, he said quietly, we'd best get you home before dark. The ranch sat in a low valley 2 hours north of Bitter Creek. There was a main house, a barn, a smokehouse, and a small grave marker on the rise behind the well. Mercy noticed the grave first. Who is buried there? She asked as Caleb came around to help her down from the wagon. He hesitated. My brother. I am sorry. Don't be. He's the reason I'm still walking on this earth. He carried her bag inside without another word. The house was clean. Cleaner than she had any right to expect. A man living alone she had thought would live in a kind of half-wreckage, but the floors were swept. The kettle sat ready on the stove. There were dried wildflowers in a tin cup on the windowsill. You did not expect company tonight, Mercy said. Didn't. And yet your house is more orderly than my stepfather's was on his cleanest day. My mother raised me. And where is she? Same place as my brother. Mercy nodded once and did not ask another question about it. He set her bag down on a wooden chair. He removed his hat. For the first time she saw his whole face by the lamp's light. He was younger than the rumors had made him. Not yet 35, she guessed. There were 2 scars, one along his jaw, one above his eyebrow. His hair was the color of wet earth after rain. Ma'am, he said, I owe you the truth about a few things while there's still time to tell them. Mercy. Mercy, there's only the one bed in this house. It's yours startin' tonight. I'll take the barn. I will not put you out of your own home. You will. Mr. Caleb, you did not marry me to be a nuisance to me, ma'am. You married me to be safe under my roof. I aim to make you safe. That starts with you taking the bed. Mercy folded her hands in front of her. Then I have a condition of my own. Condition? Yes. He almost smiled. Almost. The corner of his mouth moved. All right. You will eat your meals at the table, with me. Not on the porch, not standing up, not out in the field. At the table. Like a Christian man. He stared at her. That is your condition. That is my first condition. There may be more. You have been my wife for under 3 hours. And in 3 hours, Caleb Rourke, I have already learned that you are a man who would rather be alone than be loved. I will not stand for it. If we are to survive what is coming for us, then we are going to know each other. And we are going to start by sitting across a table at supper. For the first time that day, Caleb Rourke laughed. It was short and rough, like a sound he had not made in years and had half forgotten the shape of. Yes, ma'am. Mercy. Mercy. She unpacked her things while he tended the horses. There was a small mirror nailed above the wash basin, and Mercy avoided it the way she always did. She had not looked at her own face in a mirror in a very long time. She knew well enough what was there. The world had told her over and over, in case she had forgotten. When Caleb came back inside, the sun was sinking low, and the valley was turning the color of soft copper. Can you cook, ma'am? He asked. I can. Then I'll bring you a hen tomorrow morning. You will bring me a hen tonight. He raised an eyebrow. Are you hungry then? Some. Then I will not have my husband going hungry on his wedding night because the bride was too tired to fix a proper supper. Bring the hen, Caleb. He brought the hen. She fixed it with onion and salt, and the last of his potatoes from the cellar. She made biscuits from flour she found in a tin marked in a woman's careful handwriting. She set the table for two, a thing she suspected from the dust on the second chair that had not been done in this house for many long years. He sat across from her. He did not touch his food. "Caleb." "Ma'am." "Mercy. Mercy. Eat." "I will." He picked up his fork. He took a bite. He chewed slowly like a man who had forgotten the way of it. Then he set the fork back down. And he wept. He did not cry like a child. He did not sob aloud. He just sat there very still with two slow tears running down through the dust on his cheeks, and he did not bother to wipe them away. Mercy did not speak. She did not move. She let him have it. After a long while he said very quietly, "It has been a long time, ma'am, since anybody set a plate for me at a table." "Mercy. Mercy. Then it has been long enough." She washed the dishes. He banked the fire down to coals. The night came down soft over the valley, and the cicadas started up in the long summer grass beyond the porch. Outside, somewhere far off, a dog began to bark. Caleb stood up so suddenly the chair scraped hard across the floor. "Get away from that window, Mercy." "What?" "Now, ma'am." She moved. He took down a rifle from the pegs above the door. He checked the chamber with hands that did not shake. He stepped to the curtain and looked through. "Caleb." "What is it, riders?" "How many?" "4. Maybe 5. "Thorne." "Thorne don't ride out himself. He sends men. These are his men." Mercy's hands shook, but not from fear. Something else. Something hot and unfamiliar that she had never been allowed to feel in her stepfather's house. "What do they want? You? Or the gold I paid for you? Or my head? Or all three?" She moved toward a second rifle leaning against the wall by the bed. "Ma'am?" "Mercy. And do not you tell me to hide in the cellar. I was about to ask if you knew how to shoot. My mother taught me. We did not have a man in the house for most of my growing years." "Good." He handed her a box of cartridges. He took the pistol from his hip and checked it. The hoofbeats grew louder, drumming up the dirt road that led to the porch. Caleb glanced sideways at her in the lamplight. "Mercy." "Yes?" "For the record, I am glad you picked me this morning." "For the record, Caleb Rourke, so am I." The hoofbeats stopped, right outside the door. A voice called out calm and slow and patient, the voice of a man who had never once in his entire life been told no. "Caleb Rourke, this is Augustus Thorne. Open this door. I have come to collect what is mine." Caleb thumbed back the hammer of his pistol. Mercy raised her rifle to her shoulder, and neither one of them moved a single inch toward that door. Caleb did not call back through the door. He did not ask Thorne what he wanted. He did not announce himself. He simply waited, breathing slow and even, his pistol steady at his hip. Mercy watched him from the corner of her eye. The man who had wept at her supper table an hour ago was gone. In his place stood somebody else entirely, somebody with a stillness in his shoulders that scared her more than the riders outside. "Rourke," Thorne called again, patient as a preacher. "I will give you to the count of 10. Caleb's voice, when it finally came, was so quiet, Mercy almost missed it. "Mercy, step into the bedroom doorway." "No." "Ma'am." "Mercy." And "No, sir. That door will not hold a determined man." "Then I will help you hold it." He looked at her. Just for a second. And in that second, Mercy understood that Caleb Rourke had spent the better part of a decade preparing to die alone, and that her standing in his kitchen with a rifle on her shoulder had upended every plan he had ever laid for the end of his life. "Mercy." "Yes, Caleb. If they come through that door, you shoot the second man." "Why the second?" "Because I will be busy with the first." Outside, Thorne began to count. 1. Mercy's hands were sweating on the rifle stock. She wiped them one at a time on the side of her dress. 2. "Caleb." "Ma'am." Open the door. He stared at her. I am sorry. Open the door. Step out onto the porch. Talk to him. Mercy, that man has come here to kill me and take you back. Then let him try to do it where every neighbor in this valley can hear the shot. Not in a closed-up house where he can burn the bodies and tell whatever story he likes. Caleb's jaw tightened. 3. Mercy, you do not understand what kind of a man Augustus Thorne is. I understand him better than you think. 4. Mercy. Caleb. He bought my debt this morning from my stepfather for $60. Do you know what my stepfather sold me for the year before that? To Hollis Crane himself when my mother died. Caleb did not answer. $40 and a milk cow. So do not tell me, Caleb Rourke, that I do not understand what kind of man Augustus Thorne is. I have been wearing his kind of price tag since I was 23 years old. 5. Caleb stared at her for one more long moment. Then he holstered his pistol, walked to the door, and threw it open. He did not step out onto the porch. He stood in the doorway, framed in the lamplight, with Mercy 2 paces behind him and her rifle leveled square at the chest of the second rider. Augustus Thorne sat his horse in the yard with 3 men behind him and 1 to his left. 5 in all. He was a long, lean man in a black coat, with a face that had once been handsome, and had since gone hard, the way a piece of dough goes hard when it is left out too long. Rourke, Thorne said pleasantly. I see your bride is a woman of spirit. State your business and ride off, Thorne. My business is the woman behind you. She is not your business. $60 says otherwise. I have a receipt. Witnessed and signed. Receipt was for a debt. Debt has been paid. Paid by whom? By me. This morning. In the meeting house. In front of 40 witnesses. Thorne's smile did not move. By you. With what gold exactly, Caleb Rourke? The question landed soft, but it landed hard. Mercy felt Caleb stiffen in front of her. Just a flicker. Just enough. My gold, Caleb said. Your gold. Yes, that is the question, isn't it? Mercy did not know what they were talking about, but she understood suddenly, and with cold clarity, that there was a thing in this conversation that Augustus Thorne knew about her husband, and that it was the thing that had brought 5 armed men up the road in the dark. Mr. Thorne, Mercy said, her voice cutting clean across the porch. Thorne's eyes moved to her. They moved slow. They moved like a snake's eyes. Mrs. Rourke. That is my name now, yes. I am pleased you remember it. I was at your wedding in a manner of speaking. I rode in the moment I heard. I confess myself disappointed, ma'am. I had plans for you. What kind of plans, Mr. Thorne? Honest plans. Decent work. A roof. Food. In whose house? My own. And what would I have been doing in your house, sir? He smiled. The smile did not reach any part of his face except his teeth. What every woman does, ma'am. Mercy did not answer right away. She let the silence sit there on the porch and grow teeth of its own. Then she said very calmly, Mr. Thorne, my stepfather sold my debt to you for $60. My husband bought it back this morning for 1 gold piece. I am a free woman now, sir, by the laws of this territory. I do not owe you a minute of my labor, nor an inch of my skin. If you have business with my husband, you may take it up with him in town in daylight, in the presence of a sheriff. If you do not, then I will count to 3 myself. And on 3, I will put a bullet through the chest of the man on your left, who has been thumbing the hammer of his pistol since the moment that door opened. The man on Thorne's left went very still. Thorne's smile flickered. Just for a heartbeat. Just enough that Mercy saw it. And in that flicker, she understood something else that Augustus Thorne had not expected her to speak. He had expected her to weep, or to hide, or to be dragged out by the hair. He had not expected her voice. 1, Mercy said. Mrs. Rourke. 2. Boys. Thorne said, never moving his eyes off her, we ride. The 5 horses turned. Slow. Dignified. The way a cat turns when it has decided not to pounce, but has not decided not to come back. At the edge of the yard, Thorne reined up and looked back over his shoulder. Caleb Rourke. Thorne. That gold of yours. I will be asking the territorial marshal where it came from. I expect by Tuesday I will have my answer. He clucked to his horse and rode off into the dark. Caleb shut the door. He did not slam it. He shut it quiet and slow like a man closing the lid of a coffin. He turned around. He looked at Mercy. He looked at her like he was seeing her for the very first time. Mercy Holloway. Mercy Rourke now, I reckon. Where in the name of all that is holy did you learn to talk to a man like that? From my mother, on her deathbed. She told me, Mercy, when a wolf comes to your door, you do not bargain with him. You count. Your mother said that. My mother said a great many things in her last week. I have remembered every one of them. Caleb sat down, not in a chair, on the floor, right there by the door with his back against the wall and his legs stretched out in front of him like a man whose strings had been cut. Caleb? Ma'am? Mercy, what did Thorne mean about your gold? He did not answer for a long time. Caleb. Mercy, I am going to ask you something now, and I want you to answer me honest. All right. If I told you the truth about where that gold came from, would you stay in this house tonight? She thought about it. She thought about it longer than he expected. That depends, Caleb Rourke, on whether you stole it from a poor man or a rich one. He let out a sound that was not quite a laugh. A rich one. Then I am staying. You have not even heard the story. I do not need to hear the whole story. I need to know whether the man you took it from could afford to lose it. He could. Then we will sit down, and you will tell me the rest of it tomorrow morning over breakfast. Tonight, Caleb, you will sleep. Because Thorne will be back, and you cannot fight 5 men on no rest. Ma'am, Mercy, I cannot lay my head down in this house tonight, while there are men out there planning my death. Then I will keep watch. You will not. I will. And when the moon is at the top of the sky, I will wake you, and you will keep watch until dawn. That is how my mother and I lived for 2 years after my father died, before my stepfather came. 2 women alone on a homestead. We did it then. I will do it now. He looked up at her from the floor. The lamplight caught the wet on his cheek again. He did not bother to hide it this time. Mercy Rourke. Caleb. You are not what the town of Bitter Creek told me you were. And what did the town tell you, Caleb Rourke? They told me you were soft. She almost laughed. Sir, the town of Bitter Creek does not know me. The town of Bitter Creek has never known a single woman in it. The town of Bitter Creek looks at a woman and sees only what it can use her for. You will find in the coming days that I am made of considerably harder material than they imagined. I am beginning to suspect that, yes. He rose from the floor. He went to the bed. He sat down on the edge of it and pulled off his boots. He did not lie down. Caleb. Ma'am. Mercy. Mercy. Lie down. In a moment. Now. He lay down. She blew out the lamp. She sat by the window in his rocking chair with the rifle across her knees, and she watched the road until the moon climbed high. Mercy did not sleep that first night. Not for a single minute. She watched the road and she listened to her husband breathing behind her, and somewhere around the 2nd hour of the watch, she realized that Caleb Rourke was not breathing the slow, deep breaths of a sleeping man. He was lying on the bed pretending to sleep. Pretending so that she would feel safe enough to keep her vigil. Pretending the way a man pretends when he has not let his guard down in front of another human being for a very long time. She did not call him on it. She let him have his pretending. The morning came up gray, and the sky bled slowly into pink, and Mercy still had not moved from the chair. Caleb sat up. Ma'am? You did not sleep, Caleb. You knew. I knew. Why did you not say so? Because a man who has lived alone for a long time does not learn to sleep next to a stranger overnight. I will give you a week before I expect it of you. He laughed, soft, real. Mercy. Yes. Coffee. I will fix it. I will fix it. You have been awake all night. Then we will fix it together. They fixed coffee together. He showed her where the beans were kept. She showed him that she ground them finer than he did. He shrugged and said her way was probably better. She told him a man who admitted that to a woman the day after his own wedding was a man who would survive his marriage. He almost smiled again. He was getting better at it. Over breakfast, he told her the story. His brother's name had been Daniel. Daniel had been 3 years younger and had not had the same hard turn in him that Caleb had. Daniel had wanted to be a school teacher. Daniel had married a girl named Rose from over near the Colorado line, and Rose had died in childbirth, and the baby had died too, and Daniel had not been right after that. Caleb had taken Daniel west to start fresh. They had bought this ranch with money their mother had left them. They had run it together for 2 years. And then a man named Silas Whitfield had come riding through looking to buy up small spreads for a railroad concern back east. And Daniel, too kind, too slow, too eager to please, had signed away half the ranch on a piece of paper he had not read carefully. Whitfield had come back 6 months later to claim it. And there was a fight, Caleb said. How bad? Whitfield drew on Daniel. Daniel was not a fast man. I was faster. I shot Whitfield through the heart in his own buggy, and I took his strongbox off the seat beside him, and I rode it down to the bottom of the river behind this house. There was $3,000 in gold in that box. I put it in the riverbed under a rock, and I have not touched it in 5 years, except for one piece yesterday morning which I dug out at sunrise to bring with me into town. Because I had a feelin' about that meeting house. I do not know why. I just had a feelin'. Mercy set down her cup. And what happened to your brother? Daniel hung himself in the barn 3 months later. He could not live with the knowin' of what I had done for him. Caleb. That is the grave on the rise. Caleb, I am so sorry. Don't be. I will be sorry if I want to be sorry, Caleb Rourke. You do not get to tell me what to feel about the boy you loved. He did not answer that. He could not. After a long moment, she said, And Whitfield? Did anyone come asking after him? They came. The marshal came. He could not prove a thing. I told him Whitfield had ridden out the day before. Nobody had seen the buggy. The river ran high that spring. And Thorne? Thorne worked for Whitfield's railroad concern. Thorne has spent 5 years trying to find that gold. He has been watching me for 5 years, waiting for me to slip, waiting for me to spend a coin. And yesterday morning you spent one. For you. For me. She was quiet a long time. Caleb. Mercy. You bought me with stolen gold. I did. From a man you killed. Yes. To save your brother who hung himself anyway. Yes. And now Augustus Thorne is going to ride into the territorial marshal's office on Tuesday, and he is going to lay out a story about a gold piece spent in Bitter Creek, and the marshal is going to come up this road with a posse, and he is going to ask you where it came from. He is. And what are you going to tell him, Caleb Rourke? I am going to tell him the truth. You are not. Mercy, you are not going to ride into your own grave on Tuesday morning because Augustus Thorne wants you there. You and I are going to get to that marshal first. We are going to get there tonight. We are going to ride into town, and we are going to tell him everything before Thorne has the chance. Caleb stared at her. Mercy, if I confess to the marshal, I hang. You will not hang, because I am going to ride with you, and I am going to tell that marshal what every soul in Bitter Creek already knew about Silas Whitfield. And what is that? That he was a swindler, that he had taken 3 other ranches in this territory by the same trick he tried on your brother, that he was wanted in Kansas under a different name. My mother knew it. She told me before she died. She had been keeping track of him, Caleb. She had a notebook. I have it in my bag right now. Caleb went very still. You have a notebook. In my mother's hand, with dates, with the names of the men he cheated, with the towns he was wanted in. Mercy. Yes. Why did your mother keep such a thing? Because Silas Whitfield tried to take our homestead too. The year before my father died. My father ran him off with a shotgun. My mother kept that notebook because she said someday a man would put a bullet in Silas Whitfield and that man would need a friend. She said it would be a Christian act to be that friend. Caleb put his face in his hands. He did not weep this time. He just sat there with his face hidden, breathing. Caleb. Ma'am. Mercy. Mercy. Eat your breakfast. We ride at noon. They did not ride at noon. They rode at 10. Mercy had insisted on it. She said that any man who was about to confess to a 5-year-old killing should do it before he had time to lose his nerve, and Caleb had not argued because he knew she was right. She rode behind him on the second horse, her mother's notebook tucked into the breast of her dress and her rifle across her back. She had not ridden a horse in 2 years. Her thighs ached after the first hour. She did not mention it. About 6 miles out from Bitter Creek, they crested a rise, and Caleb pulled up sharp. Mercy. What, riders? How many were? 4, comin' fast, from town. Thorne? No, Thorne wears black. These are wearing gray. Marshall. Marshall rides alone. These are not the Marshall. He held out his hand for her rifle. She passed it forward. Caleb. Ma'am. Mercy. Mercy. Whatever happens in the next 10 minutes, you remember something. What? You did not buy me yesterday. I chose you. There is a difference, and whatever those men coming up that road want, they cannot take that back from us. Not with all the bullets in the territory. Caleb did not answer. He just nodded once and turned his horse to face the riders. They came up the road at a hard gallop and reined to a stop 40 paces off. 4 men. Gray dusters. Hats low. The man in front had a face Mercy did not know. He looked like a man who had ridden a long way and who had not enjoyed any of the miles. Caleb Rourke. That's me. Name's Burr. I am a federal man out of Denver. I have been looking for you for some considerable time. Caleb's hands did not move from the reins. But Mercy saw his shoulders tighten. What is your business with me, Mr. Burr? My business is with the matter of one Silas Whitfield, late of the Pacific and Western Land Concern, disappeared without a trace some 5 years back. Mercy's heart climbed up into her throat. But Burr did not stop there. I am also looking, Mr. Rourke, for one Augustus Thorne, who I am told is in the vicinity of Bitter Creek, who I have been pursuing through 3 states for crimes that include but are not confined to fraud, extortion, and murder. There was a long silence on the road. Caleb finally said, Mr. Burr, may I ask why you are looking for Thorne? You may. Augustus Thorne was Silas Whitfield's partner, Mr. Rourke. The two of them ran the Pacific and Western Land Concern together. They cheated 9 families out of their land between Kansas and the Colorado line. Most of those families are still alive. Most of them want their land back, and the federal government for once agrees with them. Caleb did not move. And what do you want from me, Mr. Burr? I want to know what happened to Silas Whitfield 5 years ago, Mr. Rourke, and I want to know what happened to the strongbox that was in his buggy. Caleb opened his mouth. Mercy spoke first. Mr. Burr. The marshal's eyes shifted to her. Ma'am, my name is Mercy Rourke. I am Caleb Rourke's wife. I have a notebook in my dress that I would like to give you. It belonged to my late mother. Her name was Hannah Holloway, and she lived for the day a federal man would come up this road asking the questions you are asking right now. Burr looked at her a long moment. Ma'am, you are saying you have evidence. I am saying I have 5 years of it. Names, dates, towns, victims. My mother wrote down every man Whitfield and Thorne cheated. Every claim. Every signature they forged. She wrote it down because she could not get a single sheriff in this territory to listen to a widow woman with a notebook. But maybe a federal man out of Denver will listen. Burr swung down off his horse. Slow. Deliberate. He took off his hat. Ma'am, I have ridden 3,000 miles in the last 2 years looking for one honest witness against Augustus Thorne. I would be much obliged if you would let me see that notebook. Mercy reached into her dress. But before she could pull it out, a single rifle shot cracked across the open prairie. Burr's hat flew off his head. The marshal hit the dirt rolling. Caleb's pistol was already in his hand. Mercy was off her horse and behind it before her mind had caught up with her body. Up on the ridge to the north, Sun caught a long barrel. "Thorne!" Caleb shouted. "Down, ma'am!" Burr yelled. "Down!" Mercy dropped flat into the long grass. The rifle came up off her shoulder, and she turned it toward the ridge, her hands shaking, but her eye steady. The notebook pressed hard against her ribs through the fabric of her dress. A second shot. It hit the ground 3 feet from Caleb's horse. "How many on the ridge?" Burr called. "2," Caleb said. "Maybe 3. He has come for the gold and the witness both." "Then we will not give him either." Burr lifted his head an inch above the grass, then another inch. "Mr. Rourke." "Marshal?" "You and your wife are going to ride west. Hard. Through that draw yonder. There is a homestead 2 miles down. Belongs to a widow named Sarah Beck. You can get there before the riders on that ridge can cut you off if you go now." "And you, Marshal?" "I am going to keep their attention right here." "You will be killed." "I have been killed before, son. It did not take." Caleb hesitated for 1 full second. Then he reached out and took Mercy's hand. He squeezed it hard once. "Mercy." "Yes." "On 3, we ride." "All right." 1. A third shot. Closer. 2. Mercy gripped the rifle and the reins both. 3. They ran. The horses lunged into the draw, and the world became hooves and dust, and the high, sharp crack of rifles behind them, and Mercy did not look back. She did not look back because she knew if she looked back, she would see Marshal Burr standing alone in the open prairie, firing at the ridge, and she would not be able to bear it. Caleb rode hard ahead of her, low over his horse's neck. His hat was gone. Blood ran down the side of his face from a place above his ear that Mercy had not seen him take a hit. "Caleb, ride, Mercy. You are bleedin'. Ride." She rode. The widow's homestead came up out of the grass like a small gray ship in a green sea. There was smoke from the chimney. There was a woman standing in the doorway with an old shotgun already in her hands because the widow Sarah Beck had heard the shots. She recognized Caleb. She did not recognize Mercy. "Sarah," Caleb gasped, half falling off his horse. "Federal trouble. Need the cellar." The widow's eyes went to Mercy. They went hard. "Who is this?" "My wife." "Since when?" "Since yesterday morning." The widow looked at Mercy a long second. "Get inside, girl, both of you, now." Mercy slid off her horse. Her legs would not hold her. She caught the saddle to keep from going down. Caleb's hand was on her elbow. "Mercy, I am all right." "You are bleedin'." She looked down. There was a long red streak down the side of her dress just above the hip. She had not felt it. She did not feel it now. "That is not my blood, Caleb." "It is your blood, ma'am. It does not hurt." "It will." The widow already had the cellar door open in the floor of the kitchen. "Down, both of you, now." They went down. The widow shut the door over them. They heard her drag a heavy table over the top of it. In the dark of the cellar, Caleb pressed his hand against Mercy's side. "Mercy." "I am all right." "You are not all right." "I am all right enough to finish what we started, Caleb Rourke." "Mercy." "The notebook is still on me. The notebook is dry. Thorne does not have it. Burr will live or he will die, but the notebook is still here. We are not finished." He was quiet for a long moment in the dark. Then he said very quietly, "Mercy Rourke. Yes, I have spent 5 years trying to die quietly. And I have spent 1 day trying to live loudly. And I will tell you something true." "What?" "The day has been worth more than the 5 years." She found his hand in the dark. She held it. Above them, somewhere up on the prairie, far in the distance, came the sound of a rifle firing. And then another. And then no more. The rifle fire above them stopped, and the silence that followed was worse than the shooting had been. Mercy held Caleb's hand in the dark of the cellar and listened to his breathing and to the slow drip of something onto the dirt floor that she very much hoped was not blood. "Caleb." Ma'am. Mercy. Mercy. Are you bleedin' bad? No. Tell me the truth. I am telling you the truth. Caleb Rourke, you are a man who has not told a full truth in 5 years. Forgive me if I do not believe you on first askin'. Mercy, the cut on my head is shallow. The blood looks worse than the wound. Yours is the one that worries me. I told you, I do not feel it. That is exactly what worries me. Above them, footsteps, heavy. The widow's boots crossing the kitchen. Caleb Rourke. Sarah Beck's voice came through the floor. If you are still breathing down there, knock once. Caleb knocked once. Both of you alive. He knocked twice. Stay where you are. Riders coming down the draw. I count 2. I will deal with them. Mercy started to speak. Caleb's hand came up over her mouth, gentle before she could. Mercy. She knows what she is doing. How do you know? Because Sarah Beck buried her own husband 6 years ago and has run that homestead alone since the day of the funeral, and the men in this territory have learned one at a time and the hard way to ride past her gate and not through it. Caleb. Listen. Above them, 2 voices. Men. Calling out. The widow's voice answered them sharp as a fence wire. State your business. Ma'am, we are looking for a man and a woman. Come through here on horseback maybe 20 minutes back. I have not seen a man or a woman on horseback today. Ma'am, there is fresh tracks coming right up to your porch. A long pause. Then Sarah Beck's voice dry as autumn leaves. Those tracks belong to my hired hand. Who has gone into town? Who will be displeased to come home and find 2 strangers in his yard bothering his employer? Ma'am, I am going to need to look in your barn. You are going to do no such thing. Ma'am. The shotgun boomed, once. The sound came down through the floor like a fist on a drum. Mercy flinched so hard her wound finally announced itself, a hot, bright line of pain along her hip. Above a man swore, loud. The other shouted something about a horse. Hooves, hard hooves, scrambling, retreating. The widow Sarah Beck called after them very calm. Tell Augustus Thorne that the next rider who sets foot on my porch will not leave with a foot to stand on. The cellar door scraped open 10 minutes later. The widow stood at the top of the steps with her shotgun broken open over one arm, fitting in 2 new shells. Up, both of you. The girl first. She is the one who is bleeding through her dress. Mercy climbed the steps with Caleb's hands at her waist. The widow took one look at her and pointed at the kitchen table. Sit. Lift the dress. Above the wound, not below. I am not interested in your modesty today, girl. I am interested in keeping you alive. Mercy sat. She lifted the dress. The widow leaned in, peered close, and grunted. Ball passed clean through. Through the meat, not the bone. You are lucky, girl. It does not feel lucky. It will. 3 days from now, when you are still breathing, it will feel very lucky indeed. She sent Caleb for hot water. She sent him for clean linen. She sent him for whiskey from a jug under the floorboards. She did not look at him while she gave the orders, and Caleb did not argue with a single one. He moved fast the way a man moves when he understands that a woman who has run her own homestead for 6 years has earned her commands. When the water was hot, the widow cleaned the wound. Mercy bit down on a leather strap and did not cry out. The widow nodded once, approving. Girl. Mercy. Mercy. You are tougher than your size suggested. I will not make that mistake about you again. My size has nothing to do with my toughness, ma'am. I am beginning to understand that. The widow tied off the bandage. She poured 3 measures of whiskey into a tin cup and pushed it across the table. Drink. I do not drink, ma'am. You drink today. Mercy drank. She did not enjoy it. The widow watched her drink, then poured a 2nd measure for herself, then a 3rd for Caleb. Now, the widow said, settling back in her chair, the 2 of you are going to tell me what in the name of God Almighty has come riding onto my land this afternoon, and you are going to tell me the whole of it, because I have been waiting a long while for a piece of news, and I have a feeling you have brought it." Caleb opened his mouth. Mercy spoke first. "Mrs. Beck." "Sarah." "Sarah. May I ask you a question first, ma'am, before we tell you our business?" "You may." "Was your husband by any chance a man who once did business with the Pacific and Western Land Concern?" The widow's face did not change, but her hand, which had been resting on the table, went very slowly to the cup of whiskey and lifted it and drained it in one swallow. "Girl." "Mercy." "Mercy. My husband, Henry Beck, signed a piece of paper for the Pacific and Western Land Concern in the spring of '58. He believed he was selling grazing rights for one season. He was, in fact, signing over the deed to the homestead. When the concern came to collect the deed in the autumn, Henry would not give it up. They came back. There were 3 of them. They shot Henry in his own dooryard. They left his body for me to find when I came back from the creek with the laundry." Sarah. "They thought they had a deed. They did not have a deed. Henry had ridden into Cheyenne the morning before with the original paper and burned it in the territorial office in front of 2 clerks and filed a new deed in my name. Henry was a slow man, but he was not a stupid one. The Pacific and Western Land Concern owns nothing of mine. They will own nothing of mine until the day I am buried next to Henry. And on that day, I will have a long conversation with him about what we did to those men in the meantime." Mercy reached into her dress. She drew out the notebook. She slid it across the table. "My mother kept this," Mercy said. "Her name was Hannah Holloway. She lived 90 miles east of here. Her husband ran off Silas Whitfield with a shotgun in the spring of '57. She wrote down every name, every date, every claim, and every signature she could gather. She kept it for the day a federal man would come asking. A federal man came up the road this morning. His name is Burr. He was shot off his horse 2 miles from here, and we do not know if he is alive." Sarah Beck opened the notebook. She turned the pages slowly. She read for a long time. She did not speak. She did not blink. Once she stopped on a page and her hand began to shake, and she pressed her palm flat against the paper and held it there until the shaking stopped. When she looked up, her eyes were wet, but her voice was steel. "Henry's name is in here." "Yes, ma'am." "Page 17. Your mother had Henry's name written down." "My mother had every name she could find." "How?" "Letters. She wrote letters, Sarah, to every paper in the territory, to every widow whose husband had died strange. She wrote letters, and she got letters back, and she wrote down what they told her. She did it for 2 years. She was dying the whole time. She did it from her bed." The widow Sarah Beck closed the notebook. She stood up. She walked to a trunk in the corner of the room and lifted the lid. She came back to the table with a bundle of letters tied in a black ribbon. She set them down next to the notebook. "Then your mother and I were correspondence, girl, and I never knew her name." Mercy's hand went to her mouth. "You wrote to her." "I wrote to a woman called H.H. of Bitter Creek. We exchanged letters for 14 months. The last letter she sent me said her health was failing, and that her daughter Mercy did not know about the work, and that I was to keep doing the work whether or not I ever heard from her again. I have kept doing the work, girl. There are 16 names on a list in that trunk, 16 widows, 16 homesteads. We have been waiting. We have been waiting for the right federal man." Caleb set down his cup. Hard. "Sarah." "Caleb. We have to find Burr." "I know. He may be alive. He may not. He is the right federal man. Then we ride before sundown." Mercy stood up. The wound in her hip pulled. She did not let it show on her face. "Mercy, you sit." "I am not sitting, Sarah." "Girl, you have been shot." "I have been shot in the meat, not the bone. You said so yourself. I am riding." "You are not riding 3 miles back across open country with a hole in you." "Then we are not going 3 miles. We are going 90, to Bitter Creek, to the territorial office, with this notebook and your letters and whatever Burr left behind on that prairie, and we are not stopping until Augustus Thorne is in irons." Mercy. Sarah Beck. I have buried my mother. I have buried my own girlhood. I have stood in a meeting house this week and been laughed at by every man and woman I grew up among. I have watched my husband bleed, and I have bled myself. I am not going to sit in a kitchen now while two of you ride out and do my mother's work for her. I am ridin'. If my horse will not carry me, I will walk. If my legs will not carry me, I will crawl. But I am goin' to Bitter Creek, ma'am, and I am goin' tonight." The widow Sarah Beck stared at her for a long moment. Then she said, "Caleb Rourke." "Sarah, your wife is a hard woman." "She is." "You did not deserve her." "No, ma'am, I did not." "Try to deserve her now, then." "Yes, ma'am." They did not get to ride to Bitter Creek that night. They were still saddling the horses when Marshal Burr came staggering up the draw on foot with no hat, with one hand pressed against his shoulder and with a piece of paper crumpled in the other fist that he would not let go of even when Sarah Beck tried to take it from him. "Burr?" "Mr. Rourke. You are alive. For the time bein'." "How?" "They left me for dead. I let them. I stayed down. I crawled when they rode off. Then I walked. 2 miles, closer to 3, through grass, with one arm." The widow took him under the other arm and hauled him toward the kitchen, scolding him the whole way for bleeding on her porch. Burr did not seem to mind. Mercy followed, helping where she could, and Caleb took the marshal's other side, and they got him to the table where Mercy had been bandaged an hour before. "Marshal," Sarah said, "I have to dig the ball out of you." "Then dig. It is going to hurt." "Ma'am, I have been dyin' all afternoon. Hurt is what tells me I am still alive." She dug. He swore. He passed out and came back. He passed out again and came back again. When the ball was on the table and the wound was packed, he opened his eyes, and the first thing he did was look at the paper still crumpled in his fist. "Mr. Rourke." "Marshal." "You have to read this." "What is it?" "Take it. Read it." Caleb took the paper. He smoothed it on the table. He went very still. "Caleb!" Mercy moved to his side. "Caleb, what does it say?" "It is a telegram." "From who?" "From a man in Cheyenne, to Augustus Thorne, dated 4 days ago." "Read it, Caleb." Caleb read it aloud. "Whitfield arrives Cheyenne Tuesday next stop. Wants the gold and the brother stop. Says you have stalled long enough stop. Pay up or he comes for you next stop." Mercy's breath stopped. "Caleb?" "Mercy." "Whitfield?" "Yes." "Silas Whitfield?" "Yes." "You did not kill him." "I shot him in the chest, Mercy. I watched him fall. I put him in his buggy and I drove the buggy into the river myself. And yet a man named Whitfield is arriving in Cheyenne on Tuesday. It is a different Whitfield. It must be." "Caleb." Burr's voice was thin but clear. "It is not a different Whitfield. I have been chasing Silas Whitfield for 2 years. I told you that this morning. I did not tell you why. Silas Whitfield is alive, Mr. Rourke. He has been alive the whole time. He took your gold from the bottom of that river 3 days after you put it there. He took your brother too." The kitchen went silent. "What did you say?" "You heard me. He took my brother." "Your brother did not hang himself in that barn, Mr. Rourke. He was hanged in that barn, by 2 men sent by Silas Whitfield, to make a point to you specifically, about the gold." Caleb's hand closed slowly on the edge of the table. The wood groaned. "Marshal." "Mr. Rourke, you had better be sure of what you are saying to me." "I am sure. I have a witness in custody in Denver. He gave the names. He gave the dates. He gave the location of the barn. He gave a detail about a horseshoe nail in the loft that you yourself would recognize." "Marshal." "Yes." "Say the detail." "The nail was bent into a hook. Your brother used it to hang his good coat. Your brother's good coat was found on the floor of the barn under his body, folded. The 2 men who hanged him took the coat off the hook before they did the hanging because they did not want it dirtied. They wanted it found folded. They wanted you to see it. They wanted you to know." Caleb put both hands flat on the table. He bowed his head. He did not weep this time. He did not breathe for a long moment. Mercy thought, watching him, that she had never seen a man so still. When he lifted his head, his eyes were dry. They were dry the way a riverbed is dry in August. Mercy. Yes. Daniel did not kill himself. No, Caleb. Daniel did not kill himself. No. I have lived for 5 years believing my brother could not bear what I had done for him. I have lived for 5 years believing I drove him to that rope. I have lived for 5 years. I know, Caleb, I know. He stood up. The chair scraped back and fell. He did not pick it up. Where is Whitfield now? Mr. Rourke. Where is Whitfield now, Marshal? He is on a train. Comin' east. He will be in Cheyenne on Tuesday. He is comin' to settle accounts with Augustus Thorne, who has been holding out on him for 5 years on a portion of the gold from your river. They are partners, Mr. Rourke. They have been partners the whole time. Whitfield faked his own death 5 years ago because he had 15 federal warrants against him and he wanted to start fresh. He let you think you had killed him. He let your brother hang for it. He has been running new schemes under new names for half a decade, and he has been bleeding Thorne dry for his share. Marshal? Yes. How did you find me? I did not find you. You found me. You spent a gold piece in the wrong saloon 5 days back. A man saw it. The man told another man. The other man told me. I came looking for the gold. I found you instead. I had not yet decided what I was going to do with you, Mr. Rourke, when your wife pulled out that notebook on the road this morning. Your wife decided for me. Caleb turned. He looked at Mercy. He looked at her for a long, long time. Then he said very quietly, Mercy Rourke. Caleb. I have to ride to Cheyenne. I know. I have to be there on Tuesday. I know. I have to look at the man who hanged my brother. Yes, Caleb. I do not know what I will do when I see him. You will do what you have to do, Caleb Rourke, and I will be standing next to you when you do it. Mercy, you cannot ride to Cheyenne with a hole in your hip. I can ride to Cheyenne with both legs sawed off if I have to. My mother spent the last 2 years of her life writing down the names of the men who killed Henry Beck, and the men who tried to take our homestead, and the men who cheated 9 families out of 9 deeds. She did it knowing she would not live to see them answer for it. I am going to live to see it, and I am going to live to see it standing up, next to you. Sarah Beck spoke. You are not going alone. Caleb turned. Sarah. I have 16 widows on a list, Mr. Rourke. I am going to send a rider tonight to every one of them. We are going to have witnesses in Cheyenne by Tuesday morning. Real witnesses, sworn witnesses, with real signatures and real claims and real dead husbands. The federal court in Cheyenne is going to have the largest witness list it has ever seen against the Pacific and Western Land Concern. And Silas Whitfield is going to step off a train into a federal trap that has been 6 years in the building. Sarah. And Caleb Rourke. Sarah, you are not going to put a bullet in Silas Whitfield. You are going to put him in a courtroom, because I have buried Henry. Mercy has buried her mother. Your brother is buried up on that rise behind your house. And the only thing that is going to give those graves any peace is to see that man in a federal courtroom answering to a federal judge for what he has done. Not dead, not quick. Answering, slow, public, with his name in every paper between here and St. Louis. Caleb did not answer. Mercy moved to him. She put her hand on his arm. Caleb. Mercy. Sarah is right. I know she is right. Then you will not draw on him. Mercy. I do not know if I can stand in a room with him and not draw on him. Then you will stand in that room with me, and you will hold my hand. And when you feel the urge to draw, you will squeeze my hand instead, until the urge passes, until the marshal puts the irons on him, until your brother can rest. He closed his eyes. He nodded once. Mercy. Yes. All right. The widow Sarah Beck wrote letters all night. She wrote 16 letters. Each one was short. Each one said the same thing. Each one named a name and a date and a place. Cheyenne. Tuesday. Federal court. Bring everything you have. She rode out at first light with the letters in a satchel. She would ride to the nearest neighbor's homestead, where she had a hand, who would ride to the next, and so on, in a chain of riders that Sarah had been quietly building since the day Henry Beck was buried. Mercy watched her go from the porch, and understood perhaps for the first time that there was an entire country of women in the West that the men did not know existed, and that this country had its own roads and its own riders and its own laws. Caleb came up beside her. "Mercy." "Caleb, we ride at noon." "Yes." "Burr will ride in the wagon. He cannot sit a horse yet." "All right." "It is 90 miles to Cheyenne." "I know. We will not make it in one day." "I know that too." He was quiet a moment. "Mercy." "Yes." "My brother." "Yes, Caleb." "For 5 years I thought he could not bear what I had done." "I know. For 5 years I have not slept a full night." "I know. And it was a lie. The whole of it. The shape of my life for 5 years has been a lie." "It was a cruelty, Caleb. A cruelty that Silas Whitfield put on you on purpose, because he knew you were the only man in the territory who could come for him, and he wanted you broken before you came. He nearly got it." "He did not get it." "He nearly did." "He did not, Caleb, because I came up that meeting house aisle yesterday morning, and you came out of it with me. And whatever he was building in you for 5 years, he is not going to finish building it now. We are not going to let him." Caleb reached down. He took her hand. He held it tight. "Mercy, Rourke." "Caleb." "On Tuesday in Cheyenne." "Yes." "When I see him." "Yes." "You hold my hand." "I will." "You hold it tight." "I will hold it tight, Caleb. And you do not let go, no matter what he says to me, no matter what he says about my brother." "I will not let go. I will not let go for one breath, Caleb Rourke, not for one breath until that man is in irons." The wagon was loaded by noon. Burr lay in the back, pale but conscious, with a federal badge pinned to his coat and a pistol on his chest. Mercy sat on the bench beside Caleb, the rifle across her lap. Her mother's notebook tucked into the breast of a clean dress that the widow Sarah Beck had given her before riding out. Caleb clucked to the horses. The wagon rolled west. Behind them, somewhere on the high prairie, a column of dust rose up from the road they had come in on. A column of riders. Coming hard. Mercy saw it first. "Caleb." "I see them." "How many?" "6. Maybe 7. "Thorne." "Thorne." "He has heard." "He has heard." Burr lifted his head from the wagon bed. "Mr. Rourke." "Marshal." "Drive harder. We have to make Fort Pierce by sundown. There is a federal garrison there. Thorne will not follow us into a federal garrison." "Marshal, Fort Pierce is 40 miles. "Then we drive 40 miles. Mercy turned in her seat and looked back at the dust on the horizon. The riders were closing. Not fast, but not slow. She lifted the rifle to her shoulder. She did not fire. She did not need to fire. She just let them see her on the bench of that wagon, with her rifle steady against her cheek, and she let them know. She let Augustus Thorne know across 2 miles of summer prairie that the woman he had bought from her stepfather for $60 was not the woman he was chasing now. The wagon pounded west into the long afternoon, and the dust behind them did not turn back. The wagon pounded west and the dust behind them grew. Caleb did not whip the horses. He did not need to. He had driven these horses for 5 years, and he knew the limit of them, and he was riding right at the edge of it, no further. "Caleb." "Mercy." "They are gaining." "I know it. We will not make Fort Pierce. We will make it." "Caleb, look at me. Look at me, Caleb Rourke. We will not make it." He looked at her, just for a heartbeat. Then he handed her the reins. "Drive." "Caleb." "Drive, Mercy. Hold them at the gallop. Do not let them break stride. The road bends in 2 miles. After the bend, there is a draw on the right. You take that draw. You do not stop. You do not look back. You drive to Fort Pierce. What are you doing? I am going to slow them. Caleb Rourke, you are not getting off this wagon. Mercy, listen to me. I am listening. The answer is no. Mercy, there are 6 of them and 1 of me. If I stay on the wagon, they will run us down before sundown. If I get off, I will pick off 2 horses from cover, and the rest will think on it twice. That is 2 miles of thinking. 2 miles is Fort Pierce. And what becomes of you in your 2 miles, Caleb? I will catch up on foot. You will not. Mercy, you said yesterday on the road that I did not pick a dangerous man. I picked a dead man. You remember that, Caleb? You remember saying that to me? I remember. I told you I picked someone who might survive. I am holding you to it. You are not getting off this wagon to die for me on the 2nd day of our marriage. You are not. In the back of the wagon, Burr coughed and pushed himself up on his good elbow. Rourke. Marshal, give me your rifle and put me at the back of the wagon. Marshal, you cannot lift a rifle. I can lift a rifle 1 time. I do not need to hit anything. I need them to see a federal badge firing back at them. Thorne's men know the difference between killing a rancher and killing a federal marshal. They will hesitate. Hesitation is your 2 miles. Caleb hesitated himself for half a breath. Then he reached for the rifle and slid it into Burr's good hand. He propped Burr against a flour sack at the back of the wagon and pinned the badge so it caught the sun. Burr fired 1 shot into the air. The riders behind them broke formation. Just for a moment. Just long enough to spread out and pull up. Drive, Mercy, Caleb said, taking the reins back from her hands. Drive. She drove. Or rather, she let him drive while she clutched the rifle and watched the dust and counted the miles in her head against the throb in her hip that had stopped being a warm pain and had started being a cold one, which she knew was worse. The road bent. The draw opened on the right. Caleb took it without slowing. The wagon nearly tipped on the turn. Burr swore from the back. Mercy did not. Mercy. Yes. You did not let me get off the wagon. No. Why? I told you yesterday, Caleb Rourke. I did not marry you to be invisible again. I did not marry you to bury you neither. He almost smiled. The corner of his mouth moved the way it had moved at supper the night before. The garrison at Fort Pierce came up out of the prairie an hour before sundown. The wagon clattered through the gate with 2 soldiers running alongside it shouting questions. Caleb did not answer the questions. He pointed at the federal badge on Burr's coat and said 1 word, Marshal. The gate slammed shut behind them. The garrison commander was a man named Captain Reed, a thin man with white sideburns and a tired face. He took 1 look at Burr and ordered a doctor. He took 1 look at Mercy and ordered her into a chair. He took 1 look at the road behind them and ordered the gate doubled. How many following you? 6. Augustus Thorne. You know the name. I know the name. I have a stack of letters in my office about that name. None of them yet sworn. Burr lifted his head from the cot they had laid him on. Captain, the sworn statements are arriving in Cheyenne by Tuesday. 16 widows, 16 homesteads. We need a train to Cheyenne in the morning. Marshal, I cannot put you on a train in your condition. Captain, I will be on that train if you have to lash me to a stretcher and load me through the window. Reed grunted. Then I reckon we will lash you to a stretcher and load you through the window. He turned to Caleb. Mr. Rourke, I am going to ask you a question, and I am going to ask you only once. Ask it. Did you kill Silas Whitfield 5 years back? Caleb looked at Mercy. Mercy looked at Caleb. She nodded once. I shot him, Caleb said. He did not die. You believed he died. I believed he died. You took a strong box of gold from his buggy. I did, and you have kept it under a rock at the bottom of a river ever since. I have spent 1 piece of it, yesterday morning, to buy a wife. To pay a debt that was being used to sell her into Augustus Thorne's house. Reed studied him a long moment. Mr. Rourke, Captain, in the eyes of the federal court you have committed an attempted murder, a robbery, and a concealment of stolen property over a period of 5 years. Do you understand that? I understand it. And you are willing to ride into Cheyenne tomorrow morning and stand in front of a federal judge with that on your record? I am. Why? Because Silas Whitfield hanged my brother. And the man who hanged my brother is getting off a train in Cheyenne on Tuesday morning. And I aim to be standing on that platform when he does. Reed nodded once. Slow. Like a man making a decision he had been weighing for the whole conversation. Then you will be on the train tomorrow, Mr. Rourke, under federal escort, not in irons, as a witness. Captain, as a witness, Mr. Rourke, that is my decision. You can argue with the federal judge in Cheyenne about whether it stands, but it stands until then. Mercy said very quietly, Captain Reed. Mrs. Rourke, thank you. Do not thank me yet, ma'am. The judge in Cheyenne is a man named Halloran, and he has a temper like a hot stove. I am giving your husband a chance. I am not giving him a verdict. That night, in a small whitewashed room in the officers' quarters, Mercy lay on a narrow cot, and Caleb sat in a chair beside her and held her hand. The doctor had cleaned the wound again and rebandaged it and given her something bitter to drink that he said would keep the fever off. She was already half asleep when Caleb spoke. Mercy. You have to tell me something. What? You have to tell me before tomorrow why you really came up that meeting house aisle. Her eyes opened. Caleb, you said it was because the town told you I was dangerous. That is half the truth. Tell me the other half. She was quiet a long time. Caleb. Mercy, my mother. The night before she died. She told me a name. She told me the name of a man she had been writing to in secret. A man she said had a kindness in him that the territory would never see because the territory would not look. She said that if I ever found myself with no road left, I was to find that man. She said his name was Caleb Rourke. Caleb did not move. She said it 3 times, so I would not forget. She made me say it back to her 3 times. Then she went to sleep, and she did not wake up. Mercy. I did not believe her, Caleb. For 3 years I did not believe her. I did not even believe her when I walked into the meeting house yesterday morning. I had not planned to choose you. I had planned to take whatever drunk would have me and run. But when I came up that aisle and saw you sitting alone at that back table, I heard her voice. 3 times. The way she said it. She turned her face into the pillow. I am sorry I did not tell you yesterday. Mercy. Yes. Look at me. She looked at him. Your mother was right about me. I know she was, Caleb. And I am going to do my best the rest of my life to be the man she told you I was. You already are. He kissed her forehead. He had not kissed her before. He kissed her like a man kissing a relic. She slept. The train left at dawn. Burr was lashed to a stretcher and loaded through a freight door exactly as he had said. Mercy walked aboard on her own 2 feet, leaning on Caleb's arm. Captain Reed and 4 soldiers boarded with them. 2 more rode in the engine. Reed had told the engineer that any man who tried to stop the train was to be run over without a whistle. The train did not stop. It pulled into Cheyenne at 11:30 on Tuesday morning. The platform was full of women. Mercy saw them through the window and her hand went to her mouth. There were 16 of them. Sarah Beck stood at the front in a black dress and a black bonnet with her shotgun broken open over her arm because the railroad police would not let her carry it loaded. Behind her stood 15 other women in 15 other black dresses. Most of them had brought their grown sons. Some of them had brought their daughters. One of them, a thin woman with gray hair, had brought a coffin on a wagon with her husband's name carved into the lid. The federal courtroom was 3 blocks from the station. Judge Halloran had been told to expect them. He had already cleared his docket for the day. Augustus Thorne and his men had not arrived in Cheyenne. They had been intercepted 40 miles east by a federal patrol that Captain Reed had wired ahead of the train. Thorne was at this moment in a federal cell awaiting transport. Silas Whitfield was on the eastbound train, due in at noon. It was 11:40. Caleb stood on the platform with Mercy's hand in his, and he did not let go, and he did not speak. He watched the eastern track. He watched it the way a man watches a snake he has been hunting for half his life. Mercy squeezed his hand. Caleb. Mercy. You remember what you promised me. I remember. Say it back. I will hold your hand. Tight. Tight. Until he is in irons. Until he is in irons. The whistle of the eastbound train sounded down the line, a long, mournful note that rolled across the prairie like a hymn played in the wrong key. The train came in at 10 of 12. Marshal Burr was on the platform on his stretcher, propped up against a barrel, with his federal badge pinned high on his coat and a pistol within reach. Captain Reed stood at his shoulder. 6 soldiers stood in pairs along the platform. Sarah Beck stood at the front with her 16 widows behind her. The train hissed to a stop. Passengers began to step down. Caleb's hand tightened on Mercy's. A salesman, a woman with a baby, 2 cattlemen, a boy in a Sunday suit traveling alone. And then, a man in a black coat with a silver watch chain stepped down from the second car. He was older than the rumors had let on. His hair had gone gray at the temples. He wore a good hat, and he carried a leather valise, and he walked with the calm of a man who believed himself to be among friends. Silas Whitfield stepped onto the platform, and the platform fell silent. He noticed it. He had to have noticed it. A man in his line of work would have noticed it. He stopped walking. He looked around. He looked at the soldiers. He looked at Burr on his stretcher. He looked at the 16 women in black. He did not look at Caleb, not yet. Sarah Beck stepped forward. Silas Whitfield. Madam, my name is Sarah Beck. I was Henry Beck's wife. You shot Henry in his own dooryard in the autumn of '58. I have been waiting 6 years to say your name to your face. Whitfield's eyes flicked left, then right. He saw the soldiers. He saw the badge on Burr's coat. He saw the 16 women in black. He understood very quickly what kind of room he had stepped into. Madam, he said, smoother than oil. I think there has been some confusion. There has been no confusion. I am a businessman from St. Louis. I have never been to a place called 58. My husband was buried in the autumn of '58, Mr. Whitfield. It is a year, not a place, and you killed him in it. Whitfield smiled. The smile did not move past his teeth. I have never killed a man in my life, madam. And then Caleb spoke. Whitfield. The smile faltered. Silas Whitfield turned his head. He saw Caleb Rourke. The color went out of his face in a single breath. Rourke. Whitfield. Caleb Rourke. That is my name. They told me you were dead. They told me the same about you. Both of those rumors were exaggerated, it would seem. Caleb took a step forward. Mercy's hand tightened on his. Hard. He stopped. Whitfield. Yes, Rourke. I have a question for you. You will answer it. In front of these federal men. In front of these widows. In front of God and my wife. Ask it. Did you send 2 men to my barn 5 years ago to hang my brother? The platform went so quiet that Mercy could hear the steam hissing from the train. Silas Whitfield looked at Caleb Rourke. Then he looked at the soldiers. Then he looked at Marshal Burr on the stretcher. Then he looked back at Caleb. And he made the calculation that men like Silas Whitfield always made. He calculated whether the truth would buy him more or less than a lie. He chose the truth. Yes, Rourke. A sound came out of Caleb that was not a word. Mercy's hand on his hand was the only thing in the world. Why? Because you took the gold. Because you were too dangerous to come at directly. Because I needed you broken before I came back for you. And a man who has watched his brother hang is a man who has been broken in advance. You hanged my brother to break me. Yes, Rourke. My brother who was a teacher, who had buried his wife, who was a kind man. Yes, Mercy's hand was crushing Caleb's. He was crushing hers back. Neither of them spoke for a full 10 seconds. Then Caleb said in a voice so quiet it barely reached Marshal Burr, Mr. Rourke, you arrest this man. I am arresting him, Mr. Rourke. You arrest him now, while I can still keep my word to my wife." Burr nodded to the soldiers. Two of them stepped forward. The irons came out. Silas Whitfield did not resist. He held out his hands. He smiled the small, tired smile of a man who had been running a long road and who had finally been overtaken. "Rourke. Whitfield. I would have killed you eventually, you know." "I know. It was always going to come to this. It came to this faster than you reckoned, Whitfield, because you did not count on her." He lifted Mercy's hand, just an inch, just enough that Whitfield could see it. "Her, my wife. That woman. That woman." Silas Whitfield laughed, soft, bitter, the laugh of a man who had misjudged exactly one thing in his life and was now paying for it. "Rourke. Whitfield. I would have bought her too. For Thorne. If she had come to the meeting house a day later, she would have been mine." Mercy spoke. "Mr. Whitfield." "Mrs. Rourke. You would not have bought me, sir. You would only have bid on me. There is a difference, and you would have lost the bid." The irons closed on Whitfield's wrists. Caleb's hand, still wrapped tight around Mercy's, did not draw a single inch toward his pistol. Judge Halloran's courtroom heard testimony for 2 days. Sarah Beck testified. Mercy testified. 12 of the 16 widows testified. Marshal Burr testified from a chair brought into the courtroom because he could not yet stand for long. The notebook in Hannah Holloway's careful hand was entered into evidence. The bundle of letters tied in black ribbon was entered into evidence. The telegram from Cheyenne was entered into evidence. The deeds from the Pacific and Western Land Concern were entered into evidence and were one by one declared fraudulent. Augustus Thorne was sentenced to 30 years. Silas Whitfield was sentenced to hang, and Caleb Rourke stood before Judge Halloran on the 3rd morning with Mercy beside him, holding his hand, and he told the whole truth about the river and the strongbox and the buggy and the gold. Halloran looked at him a long time. Halloran was a hard man. Everyone in Cheyenne said so. But Halloran had buried a brother of his own once in a war, and Halloran had read the notebook of Hannah Holloway, and Halloran had heard Sarah Beck testify about a husband shot in his own dooryard, and Halloran was a hard man, but he was not a stupid one. "Mr. Rourke, Your Honor, you have confessed before this court to attempted murder robbery and concealment of stolen property. Do you understand the gravity of what you have confessed to?" "I do, and your wife stands beside you while you confess." "She does." "Mrs. Rourke." Mercy stepped forward. "Your Honor, you knew of these crimes when you confessed them with him." "I knew, Your Honor. And you stand by this man anyway." "I do, Your Honor." Halloran looked at the courtroom. He looked at the 16 widows in their black dresses. He looked at Marshal Burr. He looked at the gold strongbox that had been recovered from the river that morning by a federal team Caleb himself had directed. "Mr. Rourke, Your Honor, the gold in that strongbox will be returned to the families it was stolen from, by my order, by next month." "Yes, Your Honor. And you, Mr. Rourke, will sit in the federal jail in Cheyenne for 60 days. 60, not 5 years, not 5 months. 60 days. After which, in light of your testimony, and the testimony of Mrs. Hannah Holloway through her notebook, and in light of the fact that Silas Whitfield has been delivered to federal justice solely through the actions of yourself and your wife, you will be released, with your wife, to the ranch you bought with your mother's money, to live, Mr. Rourke, to live." Caleb did not speak. He could not. Mercy spoke for him. "Your Honor, Mrs. Rourke, thank you." "Do not thank me, ma'am. Thank your mother." Caleb served his 60 days. Mercy stayed in Cheyenne with the widow Sarah Beck, who had a sister there. Mercy visited Caleb every day. She brought him biscuits. She brought him news. She brought him her mother's notebook, so that he could read for himself the letters of the woman who had told her daughter 3 times on her deathbed the name of a man who had a kindness in him that the territory would not look for. On the 60th day, Caleb walked out of the federal jail in Cheyenne, and Mercy was waiting on the steps. He came down the steps. He took her hand. He did not let go. "Mercy. Caleb. I was waiting to die before you came." I know, Caleb. I am not waiting for that anymore. I know. What am I waiting for now? She lifted his hand to her cheek. She held it there. You are not waiting for anything anymore, Caleb Rourke. You are living. We both are. Starting today. Starting right now. Starting at the bottom of these steps, with the whole open road ahead of us and not one single soul in the territory left who can put a price on either of us. He kissed her forehead, the way he had kissed it the night at Fort Pierce, the way a man kisses a thing he has been given that he never expected to be given. And the two of them, the most feared man in the territory and the heaviest girl in Bitter Creek, walked down the steps of the federal courthouse into the bright Cheyenne morning, and behind them the door of the jail swung shut on a chapter of their lives that neither one of them would ever have to open again. They did not go straight back to the ranch. Mercy had not let Caleb know it yet, but she had spent the 60 days he was in jail doing more than baking biscuits and reading her mother's letters. She had been working, quietly, carefully, with Sarah Beck and her sister and 3 of the widows from the courtroom. On the morning Caleb walked free, she took him by the hand and led him not to the train, but to a low brick building 4 blocks from the federal courthouse. Mercy. Caleb. What is this place? This is the Territorial Land Office. And what business do we have here? You and I have business inside, Caleb Rourke. Trust me one more time. He trusted her. He had stopped doing anything else. Inside, behind a long oak counter, sat a clerk in a green visor who looked up at the sound of the door and broke into a smile when he saw Mercy. Mrs. Rourke. Mr. Allen. The papers are ready. All of them. Everyone. He produced a leather folder. He laid it on the counter. He turned it so that Caleb could read. Caleb read. He read it twice. He looked at Mercy. Mercy. Yes. Mercy, this is. Yes. Mercy, this paper says that the deed to 9 homesteads. Yes, Caleb. To 9 homesteads in this territory has been transferred. Yes. To the wives, the widows, the daughters, by name. Yes, Caleb. In their own names, not in their husbands' names, not in the names of any sons, in their own names. Yes. He looked up at her. Mercy, how? The gold, Caleb. The gold from the river. The gold from the river. Judge Halloran ordered it returned to the families. I asked him whether that meant the men of those families, or the women. He said it meant the families. I asked him whether it might mean the women, since most of the men were dead, and the women were the ones left to work the land. He thought about it for a long minute. Then he said yes. It might mean the women. Mercy. I worked with Sarah Caleb. We tracked down every name in my mother's notebook. We found 9 families left on those 9 homesteads. We bought back the deeds with the gold money. We put them in the names of the women. Every one. So that no concern, no railroad, no man with a paper and a smile can ever take those homesteads from those families again. Because the law in this territory says a man's signature can sell what a man owns. And the law in this territory says nothing at all about a woman's. Caleb stared at her. Mercy. Yes. My brother. Yes. My brother would have liked you. I think so too, Caleb. My brother would have liked you very much. Then I am glad. He picked up the folder. He held it like a man holding something sacred. The clerk. Mr. Allen looked away because there are private moments in a land office that even a clerk knows to look away from. They went home the next morning. Sarah Beck rode part of the way with them. The widows had scattered back to their homesteads, each one carrying a deed in her own name. The territory was already changing in the small way that a territory changes when 9 deeds and 9 names move from one column of a ledger to another, and not one soul outside that ledger knows it has happened yet. The ranch in the valley north of Bitter Creek had been left in the care of a hand named Joseph, a quiet man Caleb had hired 3 years before and trusted further than any white man he had ever met. Joseph had kept the cattle fed and the roof patched and the grave on the rise tended. He had also, at Mercy's written request, prepared a 2nd bedroom in the main house, with a window that faced east, so that whoever slept in it would wake to the sun. Mercy walked through the door of her own house, the house she had entered as a stranger 63 days before, and she stopped in the middle of the kitchen and put both hands flat on the table where she had set the wedding night supper, and she let out a long, slow breath. Caleb, Mercy, this is my house. It has been your house since the day you walked through the door, ma'am. Mercy, Mercy, it has been my house, but today is the day I believe it. He did not answer. He did not need to. Summer came back to the valley the next year the way summer always does, with long gold afternoons and the smell of dry grass and the high lonesome call of hawks over the rise. By that summer, there was a wooden sign nailed above the gate of the ranch, and the sign said 2 words: Rourke and Rourke, both names, side by side, equal in size. Mercy had hired a man in Cheyenne to carve them, and Joseph had hung the sign himself with a level, because Joseph said a sign with a tilt was a sign that did not believe its own words. By the second summer, there was more. Mercy had not in fact gone home and rested. She had not been built for resting. The day after she walked into her own house and put her hands on her own table, she had ridden into Bitter Creek with Caleb, and she had walked into the meeting house where she had been laughed at, and she had stood in the center of the room, and she had asked the matchmaker one question. Sir, Mrs. Rourke, how many girls have stood where I am standing in the last 12 months? Ma'am, girls. Girls who came to this room because their stepfathers told them to come, or their fathers, or their uncles, or because there was no other place left for them to go. How many? The matchmaker, who was not a cruel man, only a tired one, looked at his ledger. Mrs. Rourke, 42. 42. Yes. And how many of those 42 went to husbands who treated them as wives? The matchmaker did not answer. How many, sir? Mrs. Rourke, I do not know. I know, sir. I know that 9 of them are buried. I know that 14 of them ran. I know that 6 of them are in houses where the doors lock from the outside. I know that the rest are alive but are not livin'. I have been askin', sir. For 60 days I have been askin'. I have a list. She laid a piece of paper on the matchmaker's table. That is a list of names, 42 of them, with dates, with the names of the men they went to, with what is known of where they are now. I am asking you, sir, to never ever sell another girl in this room, not for $1, not for 100. I am asking you to close this ledger today and burn it tonight. The matchmaker looked at the list a long time. Mrs. Rourke, yes. I have been wanting to burn this ledger for 9 years, ma'am. I did not have the courage. You have brought me the courage. That night in the yard behind the meeting house, the matchmaker burned the ledger. Mercy and Caleb stood with him while the pages curled and went black. Half the town came to watch. None of them spoke. When the ashes were cold, Mercy turned to the women in the crowd. Ladies. They looked at her. My name is Mercy Rourke. I have a ranch 2 hours north. I have a spare bedroom, and I have a bunkhouse, and I have land, and I have work. If any one of you knows a girl in this territory who has nowhere left to go, you send her to me. You tell her my name. You tell her the ranch is called Rourke and Rourke. You tell her there is a bed and a meal and a wage, and there is no man in that house who will lay a hand on her or a price upon her. You tell her that. A woman in the back of the crowd, an old woman in a faded calico dress, called out, Mrs. Rourke? Yes, ma'am. My niece in Lincoln County. Send her, ma'am. She is 14. Her stepfather has begun looking at her in a way. Send her tonight, ma'am. Tonight. Send a rider. I will pay for the rider. She will be in my house by Friday. Mrs. Rourke, I do not know how to thank you. Do not thank me. Just send her. The old woman wept openly into her apron. Mercy did not weep. She was past weeping that night. She had work to do. By the second summer, the ranch held 7 girls. By the third summer, 15. By the fourth summer, the bunkhouse had been doubled, and a second well had been dug, and Joseph had a crew of his own, and Caleb had built a schoolroom on the north side of the main house, with desks made by his own hands, because a man whose brother had wanted to be a teacher could not stand to live on a ranch full of girls who had never been allowed to read. The schoolroom was named for Daniel. The teacher was a quiet woman from Cheyenne named Miss Henley, who had come west because she had heard from a widow named Sarah Beck that there was a place in the valley north of Bitter Creek where a teacher with no husband and no patience for foolishness could find work and a roof. Miss Henley taught reading. She taught arithmetic. She taught geography. She taught history. And on Saturday afternoons, she taught the older girls how to read a contract, word by word, line by line. Because Mercy had asked her to. Because Mercy had said, "Miss Henley, there is a kind of murder in this country that is done with a pen instead of a gun. I want my girls to know how to read both." By the 5th summer, 2 of the older girls had ridden out on their own. One of them had bought a small piece of land with wages she had saved and a small loan from the ranch. She had put the deed in her own name. She had married a quiet man from Wyoming the next spring in the schoolroom with Mercy as her witness. The other girl had ridden east all the way to St. Louis to study to be a doctor. The ranch had paid her passage. The ranch would pay her schooling. She had promised when she rode out that when she finished, she would come back. The territory needed doctors who would treat a woman like a person. She was going to be one. By the 6th summer, the territorial governor's office had begun to take notice. A man came up the road one afternoon in a black buggy with a clean coat and a clean hat, and he sat at Mercy's kitchen table and drank her coffee and asked her questions. She answered every one of them. He took notes. When he was finished, he put away his pen and he looked at her for a long moment. "Mrs. Rourke." "Sir." "You understand that the work you are doing here is in some respects irregular." "Sir, the work I am doing here is the most regular work that has ever been done in this territory. It is the work of keeping women alive. There is no work more regular than that." "Mrs. Rourke, I am not here to stop you." "Then why are you here, sir?" "I am here, ma'am, to ask you whether you would consider lending your name to a piece of legislation. The governor is preparing a bill. It would prohibit the sale of brides in this territory. It would require the consent in writing of any woman entering a marriage. It would establish penalties for any father, stepfather, uncle, or guardian who attempts to sell a daughter." Mercy set down her cup. "Sir?" "Yes." "Tell the governor he may use my name." "Mrs. Rourke, tell him he may use it twice, once for me, once for my mother." Her name was Hannah Holloway. She wrote a notebook. The notebook is in evidence in the federal court in Cheyenne. The governor may use both our names. He may use them on the front of the bill. He may use them in the title. He may use them in any way he pleases, sir, so long as the bill passes, and so long as no girl in this territory is ever again sold for $60 in a meeting house. The man nodded. Slow. He was not a young man, and he had seen many things in his life, but he had not seen quite this thing before. "Mrs. Rourke?" "Sir?" "It will be called the Holloway Bill." "Then it will be called what it should be called." The bill passed in the territorial legislature in the autumn of that same year. It was the first law of its kind in the West. 3 other territories copied it within 5 years. By the end of the decade, no girl could be legally sold for marriage anywhere west of the Missouri. It would be a long time before that law reached every dark corner where men still did such things in private. Mercy knew this. She did not pretend otherwise. She told her girls so in the schoolroom on Saturday afternoons. "The law is a fence," she said. "A fence does not stop a wolf, but it slows him, and a slowed wolf is a wolf you can shoot." The girls remembered that. Some of them said it back to their own daughters. In the 7th summer, Mercy and Caleb buried Marshall Burr. He had retired from federal service 4 years earlier and had bought a small piece of land near the ranch because he had said he wanted to die looking at land that had been won back from Augustus Thorne. He had lived long enough to see the Holloway Bill signed. He had lived long enough to see Silas Whitfield hanged in Cheyenne in the spring of the 3rd year, on a morning so clear that a witness later wrote, "The whole territory seemed to breathe out at once when the trap dropped." Burr died in his sleep. He left his land to the ranch. The ranch added it to the school. Sarah Beck lived another 20 years. She rode every day. She wore black until the last week of her life, And then on the last week, she sent a girl to fetch a blue dress from the trunk in her bedroom, and she wore that. When asked why she said that, she had been a widow for 32 years and a wife for 9, and on her last week, she wished to be a wife again. She died in the blue dress with a copy of Hannah Holloway's notebook on the pillow beside her. The girls of the ranch carried her coffin. Mercy walked behind it. Caleb walked beside Mercy and held her hand. The notebook itself had been copied many times by then. There was a copy in the federal courthouse in Cheyenne. There was a copy in the territorial library. There was a copy in the schoolroom on the north side of the main house in a glass case where the girls could see it, but not touch it. The case had been built by Caleb himself. There was a small brass plate on the front of it. The plate said Hannah Holloway. She wrote it down. That was all it said. Mercy had insisted. She had said any more would be excess, and her mother had had no patience for excess. In the late years when the ranch was full, and the schoolroom was full, and the territory had become a state, and the railroad had come and gone, and the world was beginning to look very different from the world they had ridden into Cheyenne. To save Mercy, sometimes sat on the porch in the long summer evenings and watched the girls coming back from the fields, and she would put her hand into Caleb's, and she would not speak for a long while. One such evening, Caleb said very quietly, "Mercy." "Caleb, do you remember the meeting house?" "I remember it." "Do you remember what they said?" "I remember every word." "Do you remember what you did?" "I remember." "Mercy." "Yes." "You did not just choose me that morning." "No. You chose all of this." "I did not know it then, Caleb." "I know you did not." "But I know it now." He kissed her temple. He had been kissing her in that same place for 30-some years. Her hair had gone white where his lips touched. He did not seem to notice. He had been kissing her there since before the gray, and he would, she suspected, kiss her there long after. When Caleb Rourke died, he was an old man, and he died in his own bed, with his wife's hand in his, and his last word was her name. He was buried on the rise behind the well next to his brother Daniel. The grave was simple. The marker said his name and his dates and 3 words underneath. He was loved. Mercy lived 11 years longer. She ran the ranch, every one of them. When she died, she was buried beside him. Her marker said her name and her dates and 3 words underneath. She loved him. And underneath those 3 words, a 4th line carved in smaller letters, because she had asked in her will that it be small, since her mother had had no patience for excess. And she built, because that was the whole of it. That was the whole of her life and the whole of the story. A woman walked into a room one summer morning, and a town laughed at her, and she did not weep, and she did not run, and she did not bow, and she walked across the room, and she chose the hardest man in the territory, and she built a life with him, and she built a school, and she built a law, and she built a sanctuary that ran for 50 years and saved more girls than anyone alive could count. And she built it all out of nothing more than her mother's notebook, her own clear voice, and a refusal on a single summer morning to be invisible one day longer. A woman who walks into the room she was meant to be small in and chooses instead to be the largest thing inside, it will change the shape of every room that comes after her for every woman who follows. That is the whole law of it. That is what Mercy Rourke proved with her own 2 hands in the valley north of Bitter Creek. And that is the truth that no laughing crowd, no cruel stepfather, no fraudulent deed, no hangman's rope, and no $60 bill of sale ever managed to take from her. Not once, not for one breath from the morning she walked up that meeting house aisle until the day they laid her down beside the man she chose. She was not bought, she was not sold, she was not invisible. She was Mercy Holloway Rourke, and she built a world.